There we go. Press any button. It is an integrated triage approach to homelessness reduction. It was put together by me, G, Demont Vaughn, Kay Atifu, Linda Soto, and of course, Wade Wilner Martin. And welcome, everybody, welcome and thank you. We will start out with the slide for chronic homelessness. Chronic homelessness is defined as being homeless for longer than a year. Chronically homeless individuals, or CHI, often have issues such as mental illness, a physical disability, or an addiction, which can pose barriers to receiving care. CHI requires swift, decisive, well-coordinated care. And the system for finding and getting care is complex and is very riddled with systemic issues, some of which we'll go over today. Please take a look at the beautiful graph that we've been preparing for you. Here are our current efforts. Associated Ministries Coordinated Entry System, or CES, is attempting to streamline housing access using triage to refer patients. Success has been limited, and homelessness numbers have remained high across Pierce County. THA received 4,883 applications for their waitlist in 2019 alone. And the PIT count in 2020 showed a dramatic increase of unsheltered individuals over previous years. And you can see the trends from 2016 to 2020 on the right side. Housing and health. Access to safe, affordable housing supports people's physical as well as mental health. The healthcare system has an important role in connecting patients to housing. Studies have shown integration between clinical and housing services can significantly increase housing stability for CHI, and over 40% of surveyed had accessed emergency health services in the past year, making them perfect points of contact for outreach and care. And at this picture, you see boots on ground, our own Demont Van, doing his job. This is what he does for a living. So we have a couple professionals coming at you today. Our research. Here's a question. Why has Tacoma homelessness reduction strategy been unsuccessful? And why has the implementation of CES failed to significantly reduce homelessness in Pierce County? Our aim is to identify problems with Pierce County's current homelessness response and with CES as it currently exists, in order to propose changes that will result in a long-term decrease in homelessness in the city of Tacoma. Our results, our research has led us to propose the implementation of an expanded, more comprehensive, coordinated entry process as part of a larger, three-pronged homelessness reduction strategy designed to locate and support high support needs clients who are unable to effectively navigate a large, unintegrated system.
Now you might be asking yourself, how complicated could it possibly be? Well, that complicated.
Welcome. Welcome. Hi, I'm Linda. Thank you for being here. This is the web that is accessing services for an individual that is homeless and or a family that is currently on the streets. So looking at this graph, we're going to move right to left. And there's a specific reason why. We wanted to look at the homeless person's perspective of the barriers and impediments that are in place currently in order to figure out how to best to remove those impediments. through reorganization of the current system. So at the left, we have step one, that is the homeless person or family that has multiple reasons. The step two, that teal, is the reasons for homelessness. Now, this slide is available. I realize that it's very tiny. This web, if I actually had it at right size for reading, would take several computers. So we have the many causes of homelessness. It is not a single one issue, one and done problem. And so we looked at all of the factors that contribute to homelessness, things like gentrification and loss of work or low employment. There's many homeless folks that are currently underemployed to afford the housing market as it stands for rentals in Tacoma. So this person or this family then has to go into the system in order to access services. Now, the way it's currently set up, there is two access points. The access point at the top of the screen, the yellow, is for a homeless individual that is able to self-advocate and actually go into an organization and say, hey, I need some help with utility support, and I'm getting ready to lose my house. What kind of housing services do you have? So within that agency system, information is actually collected through the homeless management integrated information systems. That is a cross-agency software support that was designed through our local agencies to provide a bit of comprehensive support for homeless individuals. And so if you go to, let's say, MDC for utility support, and they're going to help you with a month's rent, but you also need food and access to housing and hygiene, this HIMSS system will go ahead and tell you where you need to go, and then kind of point you in the right direction. And that's through case management. The other system is through the medical healthcare system. Now, it is common knowledge that the folks that need services the greatest are also the folks that are high use of our emergency services. And so, you know, they break an arm, they go into the emergency room, they have their arm treated. Follow-up care. What does that look like for a person that's homeless? Now, a homeless person will, you know, if they're able to self-advocate and maintain all of the transportation needs and the jungling that's required in order to go for the follow-up checks, go for the re-x-ray, you know, go in for the follow-up appointments, the cast change, all of these things that require a lot of integration into the medical system. Now, at the bottom of the medical system is the electronic medical record. That is where folks, the medical system is has this big, huge network called the electronic medical record. The electronic medical record is basically anything and everything that is needed between all medical professionals, pharmacies, and physical therapists and the like. So that information is already being filtered into a system the second they walk into the door. And it's this system that we are proposing that needs to integrate with the homeless management information system in order to provide kind of a triage of those who need services the greatest. And all the way over to the left is the funding sources. And as you can see with the bluish violet color, it's not one pot that these guys are pulling funds out of. These agencies have to, you know, solicit funds from, let's say, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and they'll give, let's say, $20 million to the city of Tacoma. And then this is divvied up between the agencies, and the agencies then have HUD guidelines in order to divvy out those funds. And so it takes a lot of money juggling in order to take care of services. So next slide, please. Okay, so for a client, this is the web that they have to like pull apart in order to access services. So starting from the left, this teal that's up against that is the many causes of homelessness. So somebody, you know, loses their job or their hours are reduced, they, you know, rob Peter to pay Paul and Mary and all these people, and they end up with a short couple of months, month, and they're now homeless. So to the left, we've got the isms, the racism, the homophobia, the transphobia, the classism, ableism, all the components that these systems have been designed around that also cause barriers to accessing care. Department of Housing and Urban Development does not factor in what is happening in Tacoma. They kind of go, okay, here's the money, off you go, we're done with you. Certain areas, definitely the need is greater. And for our metropolitan areas and our smaller towns like Tacoma, you know, we see the tents popping up, and it's getting pretty bad out there. So next slide, please. This is all before a client is actually walking through the door. These systems are already weighing this person down. So this is the barrier model. And what this is showing is the conflicting priorities of each organization. So we have the medical health providers have their own outcomes and goals and needs. So they are responsible for making sure that folks are well, and hopefully they're not released back onto the street. But many times they are, because they have to clear out for more beds, and so we have the red barriers. The client is actually at the top of the screen, and through these red barriers, you know, you're dealing with individual biases, individual determinations of where this person needs services. If they're not able to self-advocate and say, you know, hey, I broke my arm, but you know what? My mental health medication is run out 3 weeks ago, and I'm not feeling very good. And you know, they go in for the arm, and the medical professionals are going to treat that arm, and then they're going to send that person back out the door. So with the integration, with it currently separated out like it is right now, that need is not addressed. Conversely, the towards the left, we have the nonprofits. Now the nonprofits provide a laundry list of services, things like utility assistance, phones, internet access, food banks, clothing banks, housing and hygiene, rental assistance. They have all kinds of programs. However, they are all over the place. So if you don't have access to transportation, you are not going to be able to go to the food bank that is over down off of Center Street. Or conversely, if you need to get rental assistance, going down to MDC is downtown. Let's say you live in Lakewood. So there is those barriers. Additionally, because the money that is received by the government has all of these stipulations, the agencies then are responsible for putting those in place and implementing those. And those are the systemic practices that are not conducive to working through. So as you can see, the funding sources are many, and through that is kind of like, oh, HUD's taking care of people, so we can shortchange one pot to pay for another pot. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the system. Thank you.
So that's how the system works, just without any coordinated entry. Once we get the coordinated entry system, what are the outcomes? Well, we have people being enrolled in housing solutions conversations. In the first year, there were about 10,000 people enrolled. Of those, 33.9% were enrolled in diversion, meaning that they were trying to divert them away from homelessness before they had to enter the system at all. 48.2% of those were successfully diverted. 13.7 were enrolled in the priority pool, which is the other option for housing referrals, and a whopping 30% lost contact entirely. Those people never received any assistance because they were just lost. Now that's only 33.9%. What about the rest? Well, they are enrolled into what's called the priority pool. It is exactly 69%. Nice. So of that 69%, 68 never receive a referral. 68% never receive any referral. Whether that's because they lost contact, whether it's because they ended up not needing any, only 44.3% actually receive a referral. Now, of that, oh gosh, my thing's blocking. 56.8 had their referrals accepted. Now, that's a pretty decent rate. 0.9% were accepted onto the wait list, and 35% never have a referral accepted. Now, for a system that is intended to be avoiding people being homeless, a 35% failure rate on one side and a 30% failure rate on the other does not imbue a lot of confidence. So what's going on here? Where are the cracks? Spin. So first things first, there is a lack of accommodation for clients with any level of functional impairment, that being maybe they have physical disabilities, maybe they have mental disabilities, maybe they have severe addiction, maybe they have significant family troubles, maybe they have significant trauma, but any level of functional impairment. Diversion and referral both rely on the client's ability to perform tasks like filling out paperwork, making phone calls, showing up to appointments that are simply inaccessible to the majority of clients with those types of impairments. The prioritization procedures that actually get you the referrals also require clients to complete tasks which do not account for functional impairment. And what often happens, according to the CES data, is that those clients are then referred to the wrong agencies. Because it is a point-based system instead of an individual intake where they are given personalized referrals, being unable to complete the prioritization process means that they are misplaced. And of course, their referrals fail. There is also a significant lack of transparency between these agencies. Providers and agencies can't access information through CES, and CES can't really access any of the information from providers. That means that the CES authorities aren't able to help clients to track their medical issues, and the medical professionals in case management are unable to help track them through the process. CES also provides very little to no explanation of the different procedures for diversion versus the priority. There have been a lot of concerns expressed that a lot of people are being enrolled in diversion without actually knowing that that's not going to get them housing. Because all diversion does is attempt to help those people get you somewhere housed without actually getting you housing. And there's also the issue of eligibility criteria being inconsistent across agencies. And because the CES organizers don't actually have access to that data, or if they do, they have to go out and search for it, it's not readily available, that results in them making those bad referrals that don't end up going through. There is also, surprise, surprise, a lack of resources available for any homelessness accommodation, but specifically trying to accommodate those with severe needs and high support needs. There is no referral capacity by CES for mental or behavioral health services. And that decreases efficacy of those referrals for the clients who have severe mental and behavioral health issues. There is also not a lot of housing even available for those types of clients. Clients who are unable to pay rent, clients who are unable to effectively communicate, clients who maybe have severe mobility issues are very limited in the types of housing that they're able to accept. And then when they maybe do get accepted, they have to often say, this doesn't work for us. I can't be on a 4th-story apartment with no elevator. I'm in a wheelchair. That doesn't work for me. And so for our interviews, we interviewed multiple people, and here's a quote from one of our interviewees. Our org specifically works with those who are chronically homeless, chronically addicted, and mental health concerns. There's very limited housing for our types of clients. There's huge barriers in the needed documentation for you to achieve housing, the ID, birth certificate, social security card, proof of income, proof of homelessness, mental stability, how severe you are on certain types of scoring, disability, drug use, mental health, length of homelessness, being able to care for yourself, not being able to care for yourself. There's so much documentation that goes into that. That's extremely hard when you're working with somebody who is unsheltered. So, no, God damn it, 1 sec. So what's the human impact here? And this is where we get into our interview segment. For our project, we conducted interviews with 2 employees working at a housing org specializing in intensive case management. Interview subjects consistently identified issues in 3 main and 1 chronically homeless individual. Interview subjects consistently identified areas in 3 main issues in 3 main areas caused by the lack of a centralized care management system. 1, difficulty obtaining necessary support services. This is things like transportation or even just a place to shower or go to the bathroom. This is issues like, how do you pick up your medications when they're at a pharmacy across town and you don't have access to transportation? How do you get access to mental health care when you don't have a computer with which to do a telehealth conference? 2 is difficulty actually locating the clients and keeping the appointments. So when clients are swept by the city and are living in those encampments and the police come in and they sweep the place, that might mean that a case manager loses contact with that person for months because there is no solid way to keep in contact with someone who doesn't have a permanent address. On the flip side, people who are chronically homeless are often facing serious challenges to their safety. And so keeping up appointments may just be impossible when all of your belongings have been taken by the police, or when you've been put into jail for loitering or for, public displays of indecency. There are millions of different ways that a person who is functionally impaired and unhoused is just not going to be able to make their appointments on time, especially if they don't have help to do so. And the third issue that was brought up was lack of face-to-face contact, especially since COVID, but even prior to that, there has not been a lot of help for people who need in-person assistance to complete this process. Subjects described struggling to effectively coordinate housing solutions or medical treatment because resources were spread across multiple agencies, and each of those agencies has conflicting requirements. Now, that can look like not being able to get hygiene because you applied with the application process for the food bank. Or it might look like not being able to access transportation because you don't have the documentation to prove that you're unhoused. There are a lot of different ways that being unhoused makes it more difficult to navigate these systems on its own. And having those systems all spread out throughout multiple agencies makes a serious barrier in accessibility, especially for those with functional impairments. Our unhoused subject described being completely unable to complete the referral process due to lack of in-person assistance and lack of available accommodation for functional impairments. And of course, involvement by law enforcement was mentioned by all three subjects as one of the major barriers to accessing care. Because if you have had your home swept by the police and you see a cop at the entrance to a hospital, you're not going in. It's just not happening. And that means that oftentimes these people will not get the care that they need, or vice versa. These people will not get the housing that they need because they're not entering these areas. To quote one of our subjects, if it'll let me, they always tell me they're not capable of doing even just simple things that I really desperately need help with, like making phone calls and Google research. That's very difficult for me to do alone. My CPTSD, it just creates like this fog in my head. I've got this hurricane of destruction in my life. It's hard to focus on anything. And now I will hand it over to the wonderful Demont to tell you about what we can actually do here.
How you doing? My name is Demont. I'm gonna start with what can be done here. We are confident that by working together, both public and private organizations can create a system that will support ending homelessness in our community. Increase available resources for agencies and case managers. Eliminate barriers to information flow and investing in large permanent housing communities. Funding increases for agencies like mine, like Reach, and sharing information.
Yeah. So step one is increasing resources. Kay, take it away.
Hi. So like Wei just mentioned, the first step is to increase resources. We propose to expand Tacoma's housing first emergency rehoming strategy that focused on shifting away from law enforcement involvement and towards the construction of large supported communities. And it redirect police funds used for encampment sweep to construction of large permanent supported housing communities, to reconstructure the prioritization process, eliminating point system in order to lower barriers and increase accessibility. The next step is to eliminate information barriers. We propose a full revamp of the CES system as part of a comprehensive overhaul of the Tacoma homelessness reduction strategy. This will include fully integrated the records storage system of all medical providers and nonprofit organizations to allow ease of information transfer. Allow different providers access to client information with cross-organizational ROI. Dramatically decrease time and resources needed for record transfer and release, and provide more accurate referrals with increased access to supporting information.
And then back to Demont.
Demont, it's your turn.
Okay. Creating of integrated care teams. Last but not least is creating the integrated care teams where we can communicate with the housing units, we can communicate with hospitals, even teams like the navigation team, like the police when things are happening. So we don't have these kind of resources in place right now. So this would really help our situation.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the integrated care teams, the idea is to combine the access to housing resources that people like Demont case managers will have, and the health expertise that is really needed to help high support needs homeless individuals to succeed in the system. So it would be an intensive care case manager paired with a community health worker, both of whom will kind of tag team their in-person response and phone response to this person. So the final system ends up looking like this. Linda.
Okay, so paperwork. As a case manager, I spent more time on paperwork than the time with the face-to-face client interactions. That is a problem. That does not work because these clients are in need of walking through systems that are difficult. For instance, G mentioned the cross-organizational release of information. So somebody goes into, is arrested from a sweep and disappears off of everybody's radar. If another organization says, hey, oh, I see you're receiving services from MDC, you're not able to call them up and say, hey, I have your client down here. You know, they're saying that there's a rental check down there. And it's that kind of barrier that is case managers, care, outreach, everybody ends up with mountains of paperwork and really tripping over themselves because of the barriers in place. Now, with our proposal, we take the client's access on the right, and we have the two doors of access. Now, through the agencies, if a client goes into any of the agencies that are partnered and using this collaborative system, what happens is alerts pop up. They instruct, okay, so-and-so's got an appointment coming up. So-and-so has a check waiting down at MDC. And so there is a lot more of the holistic care that people need to feel like you are invested in them. Because if you are just a number, I've worked with case managers that they are tired. They have so many clients and it's just a number, we're pushing paper. Or the case managers that will walk people through the system. It is imperative that the extra walkthrough occurs. Now, with the transfer of information from the hospitals are wanting these high users of the emergency room to go to day practices. With this system, they can be diverted at multiple points. You know, hey, you've got a follow-up, let's get you scheduled. hey, I see that, this nurse is looking for you. It is imperative that these cases get dealt with whenever these clients are accessing any type of care, because penny wise, pound foolish. It is absolutely cheaper to take care of medical needs and needs of clients before they are in crisis. And then the funding sources. Now, this actually streamlines the agencies in retrieving the exact data that they need to solicit more funds and a more comprehensive view as to how the impacts of our systems are affecting these people. So that is our cleanup of aisle 5.
Thank you for coming to our TED Talk. We appreciate your attention. We appreciate your listening to our proposal, and we hope you learned something. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. If anybody has any questions, you can yield them now. We really do appreciate so many people being in the room while we put this together. As you can see, it took a while, but the homelessness issue it's not a small one. It's not something we take lightly in our region. It's not even something we take lightly in our community, whether people are experiencing homelessness right on the same property where our school is located, or somebody's experiencing homelessness in downtown Tacoma. I'd like to thank everybody for the participation. Kay, Way, everybody. We love you for what you did.
And we've got our panel now, and we actually have a guest, my partner James, who has experience being chronically homeless up in Seattle.
Oh, is James up?
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, I am James. I'm homeless, like 5 times now in Seattle?
I think like 5. That sounds right.
4 and 6. And it started with my family. My mom, sister, and I from Friday Harbor.
Lester, if you could turn your microphone off, please.
Oh.
Thank you.
Yeah, moved from Friday Harbor, Washington to Seattle. And my mom had been talking to apartments prior to us moving, but it took a little longer than we expected. And by the time we got there, our apartment was gone, and anything that they had was about double the price. So it was the 3 of us and our cat and dog in a 1995 Ford F-150 with a camper top.
So I know all the stories, but can you tell the class a bit about what your experience was like trying to access medical care while homeless?
Well, trying to access both housing and medical care, I think, go really hand in hand. And one of the very first issues that we started having was all of the outreach programs that we had gone to basically wanted us to get rid of our animals. Our dog is a 90+ pound, almost 100-pound sheepdog who had, even at that point, stopped several people from coming into our truck while we were sleeping. She was protecting us. She is our mom's emotional support animal. And it was just not an option. And she was family. You don't get rid of family. So that was kind of the biggest issue with finding housing or even a temporary place to stay at first was our dog. And then in terms of like medical care, like everyone's been saying, it's so hard to get to appointments when you are, living in a truck and constantly running out of gas because you have to move it every 72 hours. You have 5 places to go in a day because you've got 2 kids that need to go to school, and you're just trying to get everything sorted and you're running out of gas. And now there are 3 appointments that need to happen on top of that. We also ran into issues. I was on the news back in 2014, I want to say, for being at the school district. We had just a hell of a time trying to get me set up in classes. So accessibility to education, especially for families that are homeless, is a huge issue. And we waited in line all day, like 8 to 5, I think, 5:30. And they closed earlier than they said they would close, and weren't gonna give us any kind of guarantee that we would be seen in the morning. Nothing. They wouldn't work with us at all. And it was a lot of people. We basically decided that we weren't gonna leave. And ended up getting tickets to be seen the next day. When I finally got through that entire process, they told us we had gone to the wrong line. There were homelessness liaisons that we were supposed to be talking to, and everything from there was a lot easier. But even just getting in the door, like, there was no one told us about those accessibility options. No one told us about the things that we were supposed to know about as a homeless family. And I think that goes the same in many different directions.
Thank you so much, James. And that's why I really appreciate the hard work of the class. It just seems like even if the resources are there, it's not made easy, just like Wade was saying earlier, for people to be able to access them. Lester, I see you have your hand up. You got a question for James?
Yeah, it's a question for the group and your class and the study that you did. You know, on top of the workforce that is currently, overloaded in the current systems, what does the workforce look like to put this plan into action and be successful? As far as someone had mentioned the police reform and using some of that funding for these services. If there are currently overloaded caseworkers, how many other folks would have to be hired in those positions to integrate all of these systems and make that communication more functional? Like, say, would it take another 500 people in the workforce to do it? Or would the relief of the interconnected agencies be able to use the workforce that's there already? Because there has to be some type of funding or,
Yeah, so this is mostly exploratory work. But it is important to note that over 40% of Tacoma's homelessness reduction funding goes to encampment sweeps by police. 40% goes to kicking homeless people out of their homes. That's not an insignificant amount. It is, and a lot of energy also goes into all of this documentation. But CES is already working on expanding their staffing and expanding their numbers. This is the CES program has been in place since 2016. In its first year, it saw about 10,000 clients, and it is now 2020, and they've seen this year, I believe, about 13,000 clients. So wanting to expand that, the thing that we need isn't so much a major staffing increase, it's to be more effectively using the staff we already have, not making people whose expertise is retrieving information go through the process of writing out ROIs, not making people whose specialty is getting healthcare go through the process of trying to retrieve someone's ID from the DOL. Like, having people wasting their time doing the things that they are not trained for results in us having so many wasted man hours that could very easily be significantly reduced. Yes, with a significant staffing increase to both the agencies involved and CES itself, but also simply by redelegating tasks and by giving the tasks that are usually everybody's job to a specific person, where that is getting done so that people like Demont and Linda no longer have to spend most of their time doing paperwork. they can spend most of their time working with their clients.
I was
That
about to
is a
say,
good question though, Lester. Linda attracted it
Lester.
though.
Let me just highlight one client interaction of my client load, which was 50 clients. Okay, I had one client who passed out in our waiting room. It was taken by ambulance to emergency, where they were diagnosed with diabetes, completely unregulated diabetes. This person was living at the rescue mission and was currently engaged with services with rescue mission. So they kept him in ICU for several days. Then they moved him into a ready bed and they held on to him till he was stabilized with his insulin. So they released him, not knowing that he doesn't have the support structures to manage his diabetes. So in 1 year, my client had visited the emergency room 37 times before I left the agency. And that was like within a 6-month span. Like he was dropping in the street. He was fine one moment, dropping in the street. I worked with the social worker at the hospital and spent hours trying to cross collaborate to get him housed. I ran across Bailey Boucher, wanted to take him. They found out he smoked. They don't allow smoking on their campus. Another organization was like, yeah, we'll give him housing. Yes, here's a hen voucher. And hen vouchers are like gold. He couldn't follow through with the appointments because every single time he would start to get better, he would slip because his diabetes was not being managed. When you're homeless, you're eating whatever it is that you can eat. And if you look at what's through food banks and food closets, it's generally processed foods, which is detrimental to him. I ended up not being able to get him housed because in addition to that, he also had substance use. In addition to that, he had a criminal record. So all these barriers made it impossible to get him housed. And I'm not even certain that he is still around because that is how dire his diabetes was. So it's really not like, let's toss a whole bunch of money. It's just using what is there. There's people that care. We need, they've already developed these systems. Let's get the coders working the integration, get it piloted over at community health care, and let's get this going.
And another thing is most medical providers already have standardized records because you have to with medicine. There's not a lot of room for error there. So all of these records could pretty easily be integrated with just outside contractors, which would be maybe a third of the police budget for homeless sweeps in a year. Maybe, if you're really spending.
And I wanted to add that it becomes a lot. We've got a lot of people who enter the field of social work, and as they progress their learning and they get more training and education in it, they get very disheartened by it and they quit. And with a more integrated system, with more easily navigable systems, even, people would be less discouraged. You get less tied up in the paperwork and the bureaucracy, and you can be a lot more effective. I do advocacy work occasionally, and I find that I'm able to manage solutions that most caseworkers just can't, because I'm not with an organization and I'm not doing it. I'm not like a social worker. I'm just an advocate.
All right, we are getting requests to wrap up. Does anyone else have any last question? Or a give back, or I don't know, whatever. Just anyone want to say anything?
Anybody got anything?
We had to push everything back, Maria, because the keynote speaker went so much longer than they were supposed to. So everything is 30 minutes behind. Yeah.
Yeah, we're pushing that 30 minutes though. So how you guys looking? You guys got any questions?
I guess I will just offer something before we start our presentation. Is one of my questions is, did your group discuss what the root is to this issue? And then the other one is, would you be interested in doing a power and a fiscal analysis on this particular system? Because we talk about, resources and needing more money. There's tons of money. I worked for the city of Seattle in the Human Services Department for homelessness strategies and investments. That department soaks up all the money. So when you think about how much comes in and how much actually gets down to the people, it's almost nothing. So that's really a part of the reason why we're in the situation we're in. And so I would love to continue this conversation and really ask the group to really think about what the root is, and let me know if you're interested in really doing a power and fiscal analysis on the homelessness system as a whole. Thank you for your presentation.
A great point, Erin. Thank you very much.
A lot of the money soak, I would say, comes from the systemic biases that are built into the eligibility requirements. So much time and money and energy goes into trying to figure out some way of housing people who are in some way systemically disenfranchised and therefore don't meet the eligibility requirements. And so they have to hop from place to place to place, and it soaks up millions, hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars per client just in case management, and then you never end up getting anywhere.
And I just wanted to add that in terms of healthcare, especially if someone's got a chronic issue, it really just leads to all of the other issues that we discussed during this piling up so bad. Like I've got chronic mobility and issues in hyperflexibility, and that has made it so much harder just to get to my health appointment because I don't have a car, I don't drive, so I can't get there on my own half the time. So
it's a huge situation. It really is. And I appreciate all you guys' participation. Thank you so much for your insight too, James. Thank you. Hang in there. I love you. Thanks for being a part of it. Erin, thank you. Lester and everybody else that participated. I got a hit from Elaine. We got to go ahead on the roll because we got some more speakers. Hey, share the information. You know what I'm saying? Pass on the emails. Erin, I have a class with you. I think it's Bachos. So we can definitely hook up and get some information. You can teach me some things. You know what I'm saying? I'm living out here in Tacoma, but I'm from Seattle. So I feel what you're saying, Erin, and I think what you're saying is the money needs to get where it needs to get sometimes. You know what I'm saying?
I have also been considering actually doing more research on this as my thesis at some point, because looking into this issue, I found that this is a lot of what I wanted to do when I came into this. I was planning on starting my own nonprofit that is specifically dedicated to connect people to resources. And so, yeah, I would be very interested in doing a power or fiscal analysis on this.
There you go. There you go.